was provoked a really interesting discussion. So we've got a really, what I think is a great resource coming for you to help you playfully plan what you'd like to put in practice in your classroom and in your schools. And I'm going to share that in the chat so you can take that away with you and you can use it with your teams. And we've got some lovely examples to share too. Oh, Priya in Hong Kong. It must be late for you too. Are we in the same time zone? Is it
Yeah,
10:30?
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
late. Oh, and lovely. In India, some of the people this morning were from India too, and
And
Scotland.
Malaysia. And hi,
Gorgeous.
Darren in sunny Scotland. I hope it's as sunny as it is here in Gloucestershire. It's a gorgeous day today. Might be rivaling Bali.
Right, let's dive in. So the title of our workshop today, workshop webinar, is Play Beyond Early Years, High Impact, High Return Strategies. So just a tiny bit of background. Kim and I are going to introduce ourselves in a second, but we co-run Press Play. The web address is on that first slide. And we've been curating experiences and working with lead thinkers to think about how to embed play beyond early years, because we are in full belief, as I'm imagining all or many of you here are, that play isn't just for early years, it's for all age groups through primary into secondary as adults. And that's entirely doable as a driver for learning when we are intentional with that and we know how to do it. So we're going to be sharing some little bits of insights to kind of as provocation to get you going, to get you thinking, so you feel enthusiastic about further developing play in your context. So Press Play and this webinar are all about focusing on what matters. So, you can think to yourself, what matters to you in life? And what matters to you in learning and what matters to you in school? A really great question to be kind of exploring with your team so we stay true to what we believe in. So, what matters to me? What matters to us? Joy matters. Connection and relationships matter. Progress and attainment matter. Self-regulation matters. Agency matters. And many more things matter. And play does all of these things. It creates the fertile ground to develop all of these things. So we think play matters for so many reasons. And many of those are because of the rich opportunities, habits of mind, learning, connections, and happiness that play enables in children. So dare to be curious. Being curious is daring. So to be curious, we need to be open to new ideas, and ready to step out of our comfort zones and learn something new. So we're inviting you to be curious today and come at our collective learning today with curiosity. So we've got a little question for you to warm us up, to share in the chat. Maybe easier than saying how you were playful today, but we'd like to know your why behind play. So why does play matter to you? Share in the chat and we will share back some of your thinking. And we're very happy with silence. So I'm just going to give you, time to think, and I'm going to be quiet until there's responses in the chat. Why play? Lovely. We've got some coming in. So Dimple says, allows me and the children to just be. How important is that? Like with our kind of technological world. I was actually just discussing with my husband, do you know what? I just want to feel peace. And play allows peace. Allows us to feel regulated, allows us to be present. It's a natural way for children to make sense of their world and their environment. Making sense is a phrase that's been playing in my mind recently. When we say to make sense of something, we tend to think that's a thinking thing, but it's an embodied thing. It's our senses that make sense of the world, and play enables that. As humans, we're wired for play. Yes. We're wired for connection, and play helps us to build that. Yeah, children can be really imaginative through play. For those of you who know a little bit about the work I've done with Guy Claxton, um, you'll know that kind of part of the learning power approach and that one of the learning habits is being imaginative. So we're going to come to that a little bit about how play develops all of those learner attributes very naturally. It's a fun way to learn, 100%. Children are more engaged and pupils feel more in control. And again, how important is that? Oh my goodness, I've just been reflecting on, in a very traditional setting, in some of the schools in which I've taught, the level of control and how high it is. Even to the point that children have to ask to go to the toilet, which, reflecting on that, is insane. When do we ever have to ask to go to the toilet? So just that being able to be in touch with ourselves and our, I think it's called interoception, when we're in touch with that kind of level of our own bodily understanding and function. Play and that freedom of play allows for that. So do keep sharing. I'm going to share a quote from Pasi Sahlberg, who I'm sure many of you, and if not all of you, know. I would consider him the kind of king of play, the world king of play. And we were lucky enough to interview Pasi in our learning community, looking at play now and in the future. And this is what Pasi says about play. Play is a human right. We should never question human rights like freedom. Our responsibility as adults is to protect that right for children. If you want to find an easy, cheap, and quality way to bring more equity into education, just find more ways to give children opportunities to play. So, just with that, it's just a complete no-brainer. Play matters, and children are relying on us to safeguard their playtime so that they can be free and be themselves and explore and be regulated in those ways. So I'm going to hand over to Kim. She's just going to explore a little bit beyond why play now. So over to you, Kim.
Oh, thank you so much, Becky. And I was just thinking, as you were talking there about interoception, that tuning in to your internal sensations that tell you, when you're hungry, when you're thirsty. And part of tuning into those is being able to act appropriately on them. But of course, the next step is actually then tuning into emotions and understanding what you're feeling and why that might be. And when schooling does, inadvertently teach children to tune out of their internal sensations and their bodily sensations. How many children, when they're sitting on the carpet, are allowed to get up and move, saying, I need to move for a moment? It's not that radical, and we're not talking about a complete free-for-all by any means, but it does make you question, doesn't it? And leading on from that, really, it's so funny that today we're holding this webinar because two important things, I think, happened yesterday. One was that yesterday UNICEF released their latest report card on child well-being. That's in EU and OECD countries. And that is not a very positive thing. Unfortunately, it makes for very depressing reading. Becky's putting the link in the chat. You might not want to read it. The report says that in general, across the world, children are underperforming at school more than ever, more likely to be obese, more likely to feel unhappy, more likely to have mental health issues. The UK is particularly poor with this. We rank 21 out of 36 compared to other high-income countries. And most shockingly, I think, of all, is that suicide is now the fourth most common cause of death in adolescents across the world. I will get a bit jollier in a minute, but I think we are all seeing some of this probably in our schools, in our settings. I work across the UK, but also overseas. Nowhere that I've been in the last few years has said anything different than children are coming in, it seems, at much earlier stages of development. They seem like they've missed some developmental stages, potentially because of those lockdowns. They seem not to be playing at home anymore. And so many people agree that children's play at home, even very young children's play, seems to be very, very heavily screen-based. And we know that there's so many issues around children's language, children's social skills coming from that. Research is really starting to come through now. So in this kind of landscape, we're seeing more children than ever, I think, needing rich, meaningful play experiences at all ages, actually. When you've just spoken about what play gives children, that's not just about children under 5, is it? I don't need to tell you, I know that all children learn when they feel safe, when they feel connected, and when they feel engaged with what it is that we're trying to teach them. And you know, we can talk about assemblies, we can talk about well-being in assemblies, we can talk about emotions, we can talk about metacognition and quality learning, all you like, but we have to put our money where our mouth is and actually allow children to experience the natural way that they develop these things. And play is the way that all mammals actually have always practiced a lot of skills for later in life. But in human mammals, in our young children, they're also practicing so much of that moral stuff that they need, the academic stuff that they need. So a lot of the work that Becky and I do is really going back to thinking, what kind of humans are we hoping to kind of put out into the world after they leave our schools? I know I want the kind of humans that I'm happy to have looking after me in my old folks' home. So moving on, play is something that is becoming more and more clear on people's agenda. Play in England, at last, yesterday also, we released our Play England strategy, highlighting the need for play for our young children. However, it's still struggling to find its way into many schools because people don't seem to associate it with learning, certainly not beyond the early years. And I have seen time and time again, even from year 6 in Wales, in a school where I was yesterday, when they were free to play and the adults tune into their play, connect with them and find ways to move it forward and challenge their thinking. They're not just learning their social and emotional ways, although that's huge. They're not just developing their creativity, their curiosity, their concentration, and all of that. That also is huge. But we were moving into decimals by counting the faults on the show jumps that they made. It's not that hard to quickly make connections into purposeful reasons for writing, purposeful reasons for using maths. So over the last few years with Becky, my wonderful partner here, we've been exploring what happens when play is harnessed and really valued in schools as a vehicle for learning, not just in the early years, where it's been established for some time, but still gets eradicated, where that's used as a real vehicle for learning right through primary and into secondary. And what we see and what we hear is that children are engaging much better. And when children engage better, the learning is deeper. They remember more because it matters more to them. And as a result of that, instead of holding back academic outcomes, they actually improve quite considerably. And a massive improvement comes in their social and emotional outcomes. Now, you can have academic outcomes improving in very formal ways, but if you can have both in a playful, joyful way, why would we not choose that option? So I think really my plea to schools is we shouldn't actually be asking why play in schools and why now. We should be saying we must play in schools and we must do it now more than ever. Over to you, Becky.
Thanks, Kim. Again, it just feels like a no-brainer as well. And it just feels insane that kind of in some ways from above, there's a pressure to take out play when you kind of just look at how like naturally and clearly important it is, you know, when you observe that and you play with the children. And I'm sure everyone in this call has their own examples of seeing that in action. So this visual is from Art Costa, and I just love it. It's so underpins what we're aiming to do in the Press Play learning community. So the arrows on the left, it's about cultures in school. So the arrows on the left depict a malaligned culture where it's not clear what our vision is. And I've definitely worked in schools like that, and they can be stressful and confusing and not that motivating when everyone's not quite sure where they're aiming. But when we align that vision, and when we've had whole schools joining in with Press Play with an aligned vision to take play, playful learning and inquiry throughout primary, you then get that alignment and everyone in your team is pointing in that direction of that shared vision. And that works for whole schools and it works for individual teachers. Again, when I've been in the classroom, sometimes I've worked in schools where I felt really like joyful and aligned with the vision, and other times I felt like a total lone wolf. And when I've been that person, I wish I'd had somewhere like Press Play where I could have connected with like minds who were building play and could have shared ideas and had that support network. So our vision in Press Play actually goes on one more from this. It's moving from that confused state to completely aligned. We know what play is, we know why we're doing it, and we know how we're embedding it. And you can even take it a stage further where those arrows are amplified and connected together, building a vision together. So our vision with Press Play is to do that with over 20 lead thinkers from across the world to understand how we go about that. So Kim, over to you to introduce yourself, and then I will introduce myself too.
Sorry, I was muted. So it's lovely to see so many of you on the call and some of you that I know. I started my career working with very young children in a preschool and as a nanny. And then I went on to train as a teacher, and I worked in London schools and went into senior leadership. And then I worked leading the early years team in Lewisham, South London for many years. And as a learning community together, it was, you know, one of the most powerful things I've experienced. And our children in Lewisham, I don't know if you know it, but it's the kind of place that comes top for everything you don't want to be top for: knife crime, you know, lots of child poverty, you know, worrying things. Our children didn't start in our schools with the highest levels of development. But over the 15 years that I worked there, and not because of me, but because of what was happening in the schools, our children in South London, Lewisham, went on to achieve consistently the highest outcomes in England at the end of their time in the early years. And it was the area where children at risk of disadvantage had the highest outcomes. And that was in literacy, maths, as well as social and emotional. And that was very powerful because we didn't intend to get the highest outcomes. We intended to give children the best learning possible by teaching them the way they learn best through play, agency, quality relationships, and interactions in excellent environments. Now I'm a freelancer, and a lot of what I learned with those schools and daycare settings in Lewisham, I take around the world, and I'm very privileged to be able to share that practice with others. Over to you, Becky.
Thanks, Kim. So introducing myself, I'm Becky Carlson. I'm going to go right to left because I'm left-handed, so I'm kind of backwards. But I've co-authored a book with Professor Guy Claxton called Powering Up Children. Its focus is on embedding the learning power approach and the design principles from the learning power approach. And then off the back of that, created, first of all, Learning Pioneers, which originally looked at embedding the LPA and then has branched out to everything that relates to it, which is all the things that matter in education. And then Kim and I met during lockdown and started to discuss how we could apply that and deepen thinking specifically around play, because we were recognizing that play was so key and important, and it was full of all sorts of blind spots and tricky ways to embed play properly. So we really wanted to think, how can we create a platform that will support people to do that? And we've been running Press Play together for 4 years. So we're going to be sharing some of the insights, some of the key insights from our learning community. Obviously, trying to fit 4 years into like an hour is quite challenging. So we've picked a couple of highlights and come up with a new strategy that I've only just shared in the learning community today for you to play with. So we're going to look at that now. I'm really excited to share this with you all and see what you come up with. So our thinking behind Press Play was looking at some of those real key grapples in embedding play. So feel free to share some of your biggest challenges with embedding play on the chat. But I'm going to just go ahead and share verbally the kinds of things Kim and I began to plan. So we looked at different subjects. So how can we be playful in maths, and how can we be playful in literacy? We wondered how assessment might start to change if we were really going to embed play. We looked at how to enhance the learning environment. We thought about the links between inquiry and play and how we could use that as a way to really amplify and deepen play and support upper primary and secondary teachers to begin to look at play, look at their teaching through the lens of play. We're about to look at how we evidence the impact of play over a long time. We looked at the role of the adult. So many different ways we thought, how can we embed play and how can we leave no stone unturned so that we know how to do that really well? So we've taken the most of the inquiries that we've done so far, and we've arranged them so that we can play with them now. So the idea with these frameworks that I'll share in the chat so you can take them away is that you can get playful with your thinking around play and discover your most impactful next step in your context. So I'm going to get our first model Venn diagram up, and I'll hand over to you, Kim, like we did before, because it worked really well, whilst I figure out how to get this interactive, and then Kim's going to explain our thinking behind this.
First of all, Kim's going to remember to unmute. Okay, so I see someone has already put a challenge in the play, Claire, developing a shared understanding on what play is, what it can be, and how many different forms it can take. And this is something that we discuss a lot in Press Play. People are scared of play. They're scared of the word because it's used in so many different contexts. And you know the dictionary definition that is about it being frivolous, which, as Becky said on the live this morning, actually that's okay as well. But play has so many other roles. And I think certainly when you start to just do this little task that Becky is sharing here, that challenge about how we help others get on board really with really seeing what play is and how it can really give the most amazing learning opportunities for children. That is going to be very key for a lot of people, I'm sure. Some people will already have people on board, but maybe they're developing more knowledge of it. Maybe some people are at the stage where they've got it going well and they're trying to evidence it and assess it more. Are you ready for us over there, Becky?
Yeah, I'm having a tiny chuckle to myself because I'm in Bali and my mouse is in my backpack, and I can see that Job's in here, and he made a joke about me being brave to not be using a mouse with my Mac, and now I can't move these around without my mouse. Having a chuckle to myself about the irony. So the idea with this Venn diagram is looking at how we could group together different foci within developing play. So the orange boxes are lots of different inquiries that we've looked at in play. So on the top left, we've got enabling interactions. We've got focusing on play in year one, developing a school culture for learning, adult mindset, curriculum development. And the idea is to have like a palette of learning. So if you were going to mix three of these together, which three would be the most powerful mix for you to embed play in your setting? And the joy is there's no right answer. We can move it all around. We can mix it up. And I'll be sharing a PDF where you can cut these out like old school style, and you can play with your teams with those ideas. So have a think. Just take a moment to look at the different boxes. I was trying to move around. There's one that says loose parts and another that says learning environment. So I'll try and move them again. And then we'll have a look at some different combinations and explore what that might look like as a mix. So write in the chat what your combination of three might be, and we'll explore a few. My Mac's behaving now. It let me move them that time. So pick three and pop them in the chat, and then we'll make the mix and see how it looks. I wonder, Kim, if they're going to be the same as this morning.
Very interesting to see.
We tried two combinations this morning, and um, it's interesting. I was just about to say both of them had learning environment in them, and we've got learning environment again. Okay, so play and inquiry links, adult mindset, and learning environment. So, because that's coming first, let's have a little look at mixing those up. So, Kim, would you like to comment on those three as I put them in? Adult mindset. Oh, I
So
love
we've
this
got,
one. And
I
learning
was just,
environment.
yeah, absolutely. Well, the play and inquiry links, I think, are always going to be important. And actually, I was just there putting together some books that might be interesting for people in the chat, which I'm afraid I was trying to get easier links, but they're a bit long. But in there, I've included Trevor Mackenzie, who talks about inquiry. Because inquiry isn't play, but play can be part of inquiry. And that can be a great way into playful learning further up the school. Also, though, more and more I have seen free play happening, as yesterday in the school I was in Wales, right into year 6. And I've seen such powerful learning coming from that too. So we really look at both in press play. What else have we got on that list? Adult mindset. That is the key, isn't it? Because if adults are being dragged into play and they don't really have the buy-in, they don't trust play, and maybe they don't trust the children with play or themselves as to how to teach through play, that's going to be a barrier. And so it takes time. Whereas the learning environment, I always think, is a quick win. It's not ever going to be the most important thing, and I see that when I'm in Finland observing wonderful practice where the learning environment isn't the priority. However, in a wonderful learning environment that offers challenge, children learn in spite of adults quite being used to how to move them forward. But we all know that you can have the most incredible, beautiful, richly thoughtful learning environment. And if the adult mindset hasn't changed and children are just getting 20 minutes in that on their own, we're really, really missing the point. So I would always much more, want the adults to be really clear about what they're going to do before they go and spend a huge amount of money on a learning environment.
Yeah.
And hopefully we will get to see, if someone's chosen loose parts, I can't see why you actually don't need to spend a huge amount of money on a learning environment. And sometimes the things that we buy can be the least challenging and creative resources.
And it's interesting you mentioned loose parts, Kim, because in the webinar this morning, I was talking about how, looking at that combination in the middle, but also looking at the links between each of these. And I was just thinking loose parts could go there. Because it's a link between play and inquiry and the learning environment. And just to build on the loose parts inquiry a little bit, that was Sean Walker in our community. If you're on LinkedIn, you might know, be following Sean and seeing his work with inquiry and play. But the joy, I mean, Sean's such a fantastic thinker, but the joy of his webinar and his workshop was that it was just so simple and doable, but it gave this really in-depth understanding about the impact of loose parts. So loose parts are therefore they're a quick win in many ways, because like you'd said, Kim, they're cheap or free. And any classroom anywhere can use loose parts as a way of expressing thinking or as provocation. So it's low risk. I mean, the worst that's going to happen is there's going to be a big mess. It's not, and it's just going to be a once off. Whereas changing an entire learning environment might be quite expensive and may not have the impact you want. So thinking about things in that way. Should we do another one, Kim? There's a good one from Priya. Sean Walker. Sorry, Elaine's just asked in the chat. Walker, like as in walk, ER, Walker.
I was just going to add on with the loose parts that every school that I've been in recently is using them incredibly. But actually, with the older children, I'm thinking about a year 4 class using them the other week, that you're getting even more creativity because of their experience. And it's just amazing. They'll come up with things that you wouldn't even consider. And I think the thing with loose parts also is when we're thinking about our sustainability goals, loose parts, recycling, repurposing, that's us again putting our money where our mouth is, because we're talking to children about sustainability, and then are we buying in lots and lots of plastic? So I think talking to children about how wonderful it is to reuse and repurpose things is really important morally as well.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm being a bit ranty today. Sorry about
for a change, Kim.
that.
So I really love this because they picked it because it's enabling interactions. And I was saying it this morning too, that this was Kim's live, and our in-house lives are some of my favorites, So the one that you ran, Kim, and the one that Sean ran just had, because they have that real on the ground practicality of real life practitioners who are in classrooms all the time. I really loved both of those. So just looking at that, and I think you said before, Kim, and I could definitely see the role of the adult in play. If we don't have that defined, really the play, I mean, free play happening with our adults is, that's a whole other thing. That was our focus with Peter Gray. But it's those enabling interactions that can really take play to the next level. And it's challenging to learn how to do that. It can be quite scary. I think it's one of the reasons play feels quite scary to a lot of practitioners. So then that combined with uncovering the curriculum, as Kath Murdoch talks about, also one of our speakers, could be a really powerful combination if you've got enabling interactions really strongly, really clear with that curriculum development, and then the learning environment as the third teacher to back that up. That is powerful. That is a powerful link. Anything to
Yeah.
add, Kim?
Ooh. Yes, I have. Because I just thought of a wonderful question that you can use in your schools that covers all of that to a certain degree. If you're thinking about developing play, at any age really, but if you're looking at some kind of play provision, whatever it is, and you just ask, what do I hope children might get better at here? That's your kind of curriculum. And this does not mean you're setting outcomes for the play, because that just is not really helpful, because it won't end up being play. What do we hope children could get better at here? What kind of things are we providing here that might support that? So, for example, to be brutal, if I'm in a year one class and we ask that question for the sand, and they're hoping that children might get better at building complex buildings, and there's a centimetre of sand there, I'm going to say, okay, well, if we're hoping children will get better at that, and I say this very kindly, but how? What are we providing to promote that? And that's in terms of resourcing, but also what are we doing to support children towards that? And of course, we can never have everything in mind that children are going to learn from an area, and we don't want to, because they will show us so much. I always say the curriculum will be inside your children. Just going on to interactions, it's something that frightens people. They think you're either naturally good at this or you're not. And of course, there are people that naturally do this. It's the hardest area to move people forward in, because it's so much more personal than your environment. It's so much about your own experiences. But what I've discovered over the years and years of studying this is that we can break down the features of quality interactions. We can really look at them step by step. And that doesn't mean we become clones. It just means we have a bit of a roadmap. And that can be really, really helpful to give confidence to people. So I think that's probably the thing I get asked to talk about most, and the thing that I saw made the biggest difference, because we often try to teach too much. And if we stop thinking about teaching and start thinking about interactions that extend learning, that's my definition of teaching, but it feels different. Back to you, Becky.
Thanks, Kim. So yeah, why stop at Venn diagrams? Why not create a pyramid too? So this is and you can come up with your own framework. These are just two possible models. So the thinking with this pyramid framework is then that you can plan your base. What's a really strong baseline for play for your school in your context? Where would you start? Then where would you go next? Then where would you go next? And then what would be your final thing? And this is like a 4-year plan for play, if not more. But maybe, I think we could play with this one a little bit, Kim, just briefly. So just invite you to share in the chat. If you had a 4 baseline, what would it be? And maybe, Kim, you and I can share some little thinking whilst that's going, from your expertise in working with schools who Sometimes think some things are important, but actually really to get that play embedded aren't so important. And from our experience in Press Play, maybe we can share a little bit and just make that baseline, because I guess the baseline, no matter what, would be the same, no matter where you were, because it's a
Well, to me,
foundation.
they're the things. Yeah, they're the things that if you pull them out, everything falls down because it really rests on those. So, for example, you might be an enthusiastic teacher who brings this in and does it wonderfully in your classroom. And then if you move to another school or another year group, if other things aren't really in place, it can just fall apart. And if you want this to be sustainable, it's worth looking at the long-term things as well, alongside the quick fixes, I guess. Something it's really helpful to think about if you do use something like these boxes is once you've thought about your framework, your foundation, and your, it's kind of like a bit of a hierarchy in a way, isn't it? Although it won't always work like that, is say these are boxes. I use boxes when I talk about pedagogy. If we were to unpack that box, say adult mindset, what does that mean? What are we looking for? And in my work with teams moving forward in a vision on play, we start to actually collate this down to a few key statements that usually are around what we want to see the adult doing, being like, and providing, which then can gradually almost lead into a manifesto for play. And actually, much less interesting, a kind of accountability measure in a way for what we want to see and be like ourselves as adults. So that's just one way of using this sort of, it's a pedagogical model, really, isn't it, in a way?
Mm-hmm. And we've got a response in the chat from Job, and just, I just think that's really interesting, because that culture for learning and adult mindset, without having an adult mindset that's playful and a staff of adults who are playful, you're not going to get anywhere, and again, the same thing with the culture for learning. It's like that Art Costa visual that I showed at the beginning. If you don't have that alignment and a culture of learning to embed something, you're going to be kind of going against the grain, which is exactly why our very first speaker was Dr. Kulvar Natwal. I'll write his name in the chat in a second, who's done a PhD in developing school cultures for learning. And so then having that baseline of a learning culture just really made that difference. Yeah, and I was saying to Job, imagine that school. Imagine if you actually had a school culture for learning, adult mindset, the links between play and inquiry and play and learning to learn. Imagine if you had that embedded. That was just like baseline. Everybody knows how to do that. I mean, I'm going back into that school to teach. That would be amazing. And I would say too, Kim, the enabling interactions, and that's hard to get in place. So yeah, you can take this away and you can go play with it. It's the PDF's in the chat, so you can play with both of those with your school and see what you come up with, or play by yourself. I would totally happily cut things out and move these around and play by myself with these. I'm going to get back into the presentation. I think I did it straight away. Hurrah. And yeah, so then we're going to move on and share some kind of examples with you. So just give me 1 second. Okay, cool. Let's go. Okay, so first of all, kind of the title of this is High Impact, High Return. So I just wanted to kind of talk about, in terms of education, what we mean by high ROI. So ROI is obviously return on investment, like you'd use with money. I also talk about ROE, return on energy, high return on energy, because working in schools, teaching in schools, being in schools, it's busy, and we have admin tasks that nobody wants to do. That's not high return on energy. So we want our teaching and our learning to have that return on energy for and with the children and for and with ourselves. And for return on investment, we want to take those actions that we know are going to make a big impact and a ripple effect beyond that moment, like really smart, consciously competent actions that are going to help us gradually embed play. So that's just kind of defining what we mean by that. So Kim and I are going to share just a couple of examples that have come from Press Play. So we've got a section in Press Play called Playful Practice, and it's a place that our members can share their practice, others can learn from them, and other people can add their practice, and we can get feedback and just have that really visual, practical ideas for embedding play. It's just one little section. So Kim's going to go first, sharing something one of our kind of lead thinkers Anna Taylor has shared in our playful practice. Over to you, Kim.
Yes, so the playful practice section, which you can't say after a gin and tonic, it's my favorite section because I get new ideas all the time. And Anna's idea was something I had never considered, and I don't know why not. So she wanted to really help develop that playful mindset and help, staff right across the school think about how wonderful it is to be playful. And so she has been putting invitations, I think it's weekly, in her staff room for staff to just explore and be playful with. And they have loved it. This one is really funny. I mean, they're so simple and they're not all about doing things, really with your hands. They don't require a lot of resources. So this is write an anonymous fact about yourself on a piece of paper. And she said they found out really funny things about each other, like someone had appeared in a Busted video. Someone else's cat took all the room up on their bed, so they now slept somewhere else. Just really fascinating things, and they were trying to work out who'd done them. What else have we got there from Anna? Just to give you a few other examples, because I would never have thought of these. Look at this. The joy of these ideas is, if you're wanting to take play right through primary or even beyond, you see how you could use these with children too. So pick your favourite song to play in the staff room. Couldn't you do that with children? I know the year sixes I was with yesterday would love that. We'd have to make sure it was clean, but you might then talk about, why have you chosen that? What is it you like about it? What genre of music is? What emotions does it bring up in you? And what's the last one we've got there? Something using loose parts, isn't it? So I think this is loose parts and Play-Doh. It could have been clay instead, but just create for a second. And we all know, don't we, how when adults actually take a time out for a moment to have a little play, how it impacts on their well-being. And these adults seeing how just a bit of clay and a few buttons could lead to so many different representations. And then this is understanding, isn't it, about the different ways that children express themselves. It's a wonderful way into looking at multimodality, the different languages of children, how we might use loose parts or paint or song or music or writing or even our behavior to express ourselves. That symbolic awareness really developing. And so, so many other ideas she shared. And these are just 3 that I really loved.
Thanks, Kim.
Okay.
Yeah, and just a little bit around the, the intentionality around that as well, the kind of in different schools I've been in, sometimes I have dodged the staff room, either because it's a ghost town and no one's there, or because people just moan there, and I'm not here to moan, So to have these kinds of things in the staff room that develop relationships and fun conversations and get us in that playful mindset, first of all, it builds those relationships and puts everyone at ease. And it's that modeling of playfulness that then Anna will be very explicit about in her kind of thinking too, and how are we being playful as adults. So when we looked at that Impress play, we interviewed an inventor called Dominic Wilcox. I'd highly recommend looking up his company, Little Inventors. He basically gets, children invent things and he gets their inventions made, which is just the most gorgeous thing. And they're an incredible company. We're in lockdown, we did some work with them. And they're just really responsive and gorgeous. So the idea being that, get inside an inventor's mindset and look at how he's playful as an adult so we can learn to do that too. So the second thing that we're going to share is looking at links between play and learning to learn, which, by the way, in people's answers in the chat, that filled my little learning heart, that lots of people were saying that was a really important thing, play and learning to learn. Because of course, with that being my passion, I completely agree. So, and it brings looking at learning to learn, brings that robustness to play. So again, play for frivolity, yes, why not? And play for depth and play for impact. And at the end of the day, we need to prove that play is working in terms of progression and kind of expansion of learning. So learning to learn is a really good way to hook in with play to make it really deep. Now, I have a video of the children in my class in Bangkok Patana, and I forgot to do that little tick box thing when I screen shared. So I'm just going to try and wing it and see if it works. And if not, I'll have to pop out of the screen share and come out. So these are two pupils in my early years classroom at Bangkok Patana. Let's see if I can get it to work. Just Kim, I can see your face, so just give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down if the sound works.
It's a bit laggy, so there's no sound.
There's no sound. Okay, right, come out and go back in again.
I am going to write to Zoom one day and say, can you just tell me how to set that box as a default? Well, maybe I won't write to them. Maybe I'll just Google it.
Cool. Are we back in? That's worked, and now it should work. Yeah, it is insane. Someone explained to me why you'd never want that, but I forgot to do it. So let's see if it works.
Green.
Yeah.
And blue. And then purple. You know how to do it now? No. Okay, try doing it by yourself. It is over here, right? You only, every day you need to look at this. Now, orange. And what else? No, look at this. Look at this. You're making it silly. Good job. You can read the split right here. And blue, after green, and then purple. Yeah, good job. Good job, Sarah. Put it together then.
Cool. So I'll invite you to share in the chat what kind of learning habits were you seeing between these incredible two little learners. And whilst you're reflecting on and sharing that, I'll share the intentionality behind recording that kind of learning. So there are several different ways that we would record learning in that early years classroom when I taught in year 1, 2. Sometimes just to get, a capture of a moment of learning. So get 100% collaboration going on. So then one of the questions we might be asking the children is what makes this great collaboration? How do we know that this is really good collaboration? And another way we would do it would be to get a time-lapse video of learning happening and then unpick what Guy Claxton calls the guts of learning, the process of learning. So ask children things like, what were you thinking at this moment? How did you make it challenging? How did you get over that challenge? What would you do differently next time? So getting all of that metacognitive thinking out of children through watching back on their learning like a fly in the wall. So we've also got turn-taking, cooperation, for sure. They're coaching one another. I wish I could claim that I taught them how to do that, but they're just doing it naturally. How, I don't know, but it's quite incredible. So we picked out their coaching language and how Harley on the right wasn't giving Zena on the left the answers. She was showing her and encouraging her. So we'd pick out that language. I used to have a display in my classroom behind the interactive whiteboard, and it said superpower learners say, and we would pick out children's very rich, what Guy Claxton calls learnish, the language for learning, and then collect it and reflect it back to children. It became part of our classroom vocabulary. So yeah, encouragement and direct feedback. Which 4 years old, quite impressive that she's doing that. And that encouragement, how much do we want that in classrooms? Like loads. The more we can amplify that, the more we're helped with our learning and that learning culture we're creating. And just to add a little bit more, and Kim and I are always wondering, even though we've got 20 lead thinkers in Press Play, who next, what next? And I was watching Stephen W. Porges, is that how you say his name? Porges? I'm not sure how you say his surname. But he was talking about, so one of his focuses is on trauma and polyvagal theory, if you know him already. he was having a conversation with Gabor Mate, and he was talking about the power of play and why play was so important to learn and pick up on visual cues. And there was no other real way that children could get that. So I found that fascinating, as well as a kind of why behind play. So this is an invitation to think, when your children are playing, how are you lifting up and reflecting back that deep learning and that deep language for learning and that metacognitive element of their play, so that you can amplify it and the children can do more of it and they can build on it. So let's move on. Okay, so we're going to introduce a little bit about Press Play in our learning community and kind of what we have so far. And we have an offer for you to join if you feel called. And if we have a little bit of time at the end, I'll take you into Press Play and give you a little tour. We had time for that this morning. And maybe if some of you just want to stay for 5 minutes and see it at the end, it's kind of, you really get a feel for what it's like to be in our learning community. Thinking about Press Play and how we amplify the learning in Press Play, and how, you know, we've got video clips, provocations, learning from these 20 lead thinkers, and it's a huge bank of content. So we've reflected, how can we make that accessible, and how can we ensure that there's collective efficacy in Press Play so that that has the impact in your teams that it can have. So one way we've done that is to develop these learning journeys. So this is just an example of a cross-community learning journey from many of our lead thinkers, looking at how we document and assess play. So each of these kind of weeks is a provocation that is hyperlinked. So it's actually a PDF when you come into the community. And say you were looking at the first week with Anne Van Dam, the what and why of documentation, you can just click on that and it would take you straight into a provocation in the community with coaching questions and feedback and comments from our community members that you can add to too. But what a smorgasbord of expertise. I don't know how else you get this from Anne Van Dam, Julie Fisher, the Project Zero team, Bill Lucas and Pasi Solberg, all giving a perspective on how to document and assess play. And if you were to invite all of those speakers to your school, it would be astronomically expensive, partly because they're on completely different sides of the globe. So to have that all in one platform, all in one place, is super, super potent. So we've got these as cross-community learning journeys, and we've made speaker-specific ones. So for example, Julie Fisher looked very early on at how we can take play into year one. So we have 2 learning journeys, in fact, on taking play into year one. And Bill Lucas looked at assessing play. So we have a learning journey for Bill Lucas on assessing play. So yeah, all these different ways of kind of reflecting this content. So that's one way we take that learning really deep. This is another way. So Kim and I are talking about, how do we build that warm, playful accountability? Because early on in our Press Play journey, we had... on the very first year of our Press Play journey, sometimes people would join and they would get really excited and inspired, and they'd join in for a week or two. And then it's hard when you're in a school, you've got lots on, to come back in and prioritize your own learning. So Kim and I have been reflecting, how can we support people in that? So alongside those learning journeys, we're looking at having weekly playful provocations that will get people finding different content and sharing. We're looking at ways of having kind of live sessions like this, but to connect with community members across the world, share practice, share ideas, have hot seats where we can ask questions and really unpick those grapples that we've got going in play. So we're looking at all those ways we can connect people within the community and get those discussions going in lots of different ways. So this is from Michelle, who was at the International School of Paris when she was in Press Play. And this is what she says about Press Play. So she said she'd definitely recommend joining to anyone who's keen to take the time to reflect on their practice and put play at the centre of learning. Collaborating with colleagues within our school and internationally. Again, when do we get the chance to do that consistently over time, and have the privilege of hearing from inspiring experts who challenge and encourage us to be better for the children in our classrooms, is so worthwhile. So just a few of our inquiries. I said we have about 20, but just to give you a little snapshot, these have been a few of our speakers and inquiries. So Sugata Mitra talked to us about creativity and play and how we can make play more creative. Kath Murdoch looked at the links with inquiry and play. She was a real game changer for upper primary teachers. That's when they kind of just really clicked with how to make learning more playful. Deborah Kidd looked at developing curriculum with play and making sure that was embedded. Anne Van Dam looked at developing both documentation and learning environments. I'm not going to go through them all. Dominic Wilcox is the guy with the really cool headset. He's the inventor. So he looked at us being playful adults. So what next? You've got that fantastic PDF to play around with ideas and think about how to embed those ideas with your teams. And you can also come and join us in our amazing learning community. So we've got a couple of offers for you. One is if you're an individual, you can join for either £20 a month. It's a bargain for all of that content and all of that connection. Or you get 2 months off and £200 for the year if you'd like to do that. For the first 20 people who sign up, you'll get an additional gift of two webinars from me and Kim. And if you sign up with the link that I'll share in a minute, you will definitely get those because there's 20 of us in this call. So we'd love to have you join. And we're looking at really, inviting discounts for whole school membership. Because when we've had whole schools join Press Play, it's a paradigm shift. We've had schools that have gone from some members of staff being resistant to and confused by play to every single staff member being an advocate for play and knowing exactly what they're doing and why. So we just wanted to make it a no-brainer. So for the first 10 schools, it would be £1,000 for your whole school to join, every single staff member, to get access to all of those learning journeys, all of those speakers. You would also, and you'd have all those learning journeys and 2 webinars from me and Kim as well. So just to wrap up, we've talked about why play and very specifically why play now. We've looked at playing with and strategizing focal points for play with our kind of Venn diagrams and our pyramid. High ROI actions we can take to move towards play in a more playful approach. And you've been invited to join our international learning community. So that's me and Kim. We're mostly active on LinkedIn. So Press Play has a LinkedIn, Kim has a LinkedIn, I have a LinkedIn. So you can find us there and make sure you're connected with us. Please don't follow me, connect with me. I want to learn from you too. And I'm going to stop the screen share, pop out and see if Kim can lead any questions whilst I get the links and pop them in the chat so that you can either book in for a call, look at the Press Play landing page, and right at the bottom, if you want to sign up your school, fill in that form and you'll have a space. And I'll share the link to join for £20 a month or £200 a year. And one final thing on that, we were saying this morning, if you want to come in and binge on play videos and play provocations for 2 months, please do that. You're very, very welcome. We want you to get the most out of that and for that to be impactful on your learning. So I'm going to pop out and hand over to Kim for any questions. So write any questions in the chat or unmute and share, and I'll share those links.
Okay, and also just to add to that, I suppose it's obvious from what Becky said, but if you just want to try it out, you can just join, on that monthly basis without the long-term commitment. So I just wanted to see if anyone has any questions they want to ask us, or even just any comments that they want to make before we just dive into those of you who would like to have a quick look at the site. Anything anyone wants to, you can unmute or you can put it in the chat. Any questions? No, it takes a while, so I don't want to move on and assume you haven't got them if somebody's busily typing. Just while we're waiting to see if anyone has got any questions, I don't know if you noticed when Becky was talking, I just put in the LinkedIn link to Press Play so that you can go onto LinkedIn if that's where you work. And also we've got the websites up there as well for anyone interested. Okay, anything anyone wanted to ask or share or comment on? Oh, thank you so much, Claire. So, Claire, you're in Austria at the moment, aren't you? We've got so many people from so many different places on this afternoon. Well, this afternoon to me in the UK. I think we've got some people in from the US, I can see, I'm guessing. Yeah, Vienna, of course. Okay. So, Becky, are you ready to take us for a dive in?
Just trying to get the Calendly link. Just give me a sec.
Oh,
I'll pop
sorry.
that in the chat. It's all right.
Okay.
So I'm just getting the Calendly link. Okay, there we go. So you've got all the links now. So that was to book in for Calendly. There's the £20 a month, and there's the whole school one. And if everyone needs to go, that's absolutely fine. But Kim and I'll hang around for 5 minutes to do a little press play tour for any of you who would like to have a sneak peek inside. So I shall screen share, and thank you for the lovely thanks in the chat. That's really appreciated.
Thank you
Right.
for those who are going that joined us. Thank you for being with us.
Okay, let me just get this up. 2 seconds. Right, here we go. My screen's gone into night mode, so we're in like black background for press play. So this is the learning community when you come in. It's on a platform called Mighty Networks, which is really intuitive, easy to use, closed community. So you're not going to get any of the noise of social media. LinkedIn's a much safer space than Twitter was, but Twitter certainly wasn't a safe space to be sharing practice. This is completely closed and aligned with play practitioners. So I'll just show you a few key areas in our community so you can get a feel of how this looks and how you could engage. So there's a news feed, just like on social media, where the latest posts will just pop up at the top. There's also an app, so you can play with it on your phone. And then we've got all of the areas here down the left-hand side if you want to go into something specific. So playful practice is an area where we share our practice that I mentioned before. So anyone can post at any time a provocation or an idea. But we've got our latest from Kim here from a school in Wales. And then people share and reflect in the comments below, and we give feedback as we go. And any member can kind of come in and share a provocation or a thought, and then we share our thinking back again. So it's just a really great idea to get loads of practical ideas on how to get play going in your staff rooms. So this is kind of Anna, who's been looking at ways to get her staff sharing playful thinking, and it goes on for a very long time. There's a lot of stuff in there. And then these are each of our inquiries. So again, because learning environments came up with lots of people, I'll show you that one. So then it's really easy to find your way around. In each area, we've got the full live interview. So this is a full live with Anne Van Dam talking about learning environments. And then we've broken down those videos into micro content and created, I'll just show you one so you get the idea. But per inquiry, we've got 4 of these at least, and we've got 20 inquiries. So we've got 80 different provocations. That'll keep you busy. So it's always a short video provocation, some thinking, and then some questions to get you thinking about how to put that into practice. And then we have people sharing thinking in the comments too. So you get a lot of ideas and reflections, that kind of visible thinking from our community members. And then I'll show you one other thing, because I mentioned it. All of our cross-community learning journeys are pinned to the top here. So when it loads, I'll just show you one of those. So for example, we've got leadership in play. I'll very quickly show you how this works because, you know, in my mind, it's obvious, but until you actually show it. So these are perspectives on leading through play, but this is the PDF that you can then open up and it just makes it really easy to find the content. So let's say you're interested in coaching models, you can then, oh, it's not working for me. Okay, let's say, hang on. Oh, it did work. I'm just being impatient. I'm doing that thing where I'm clicking it many times. Work. If you're interested in coaching models, then here is Cole Van Atwell talking about how you can develop coaching models in your school, and it takes you straight to that. And it just makes it really easy to access that content across our community. Kim talking about scaffolds. So that's just a really quick insight. But people come in and they love it, and their learning kind of goes through the roof when they regularly check in and engage with those provocations. That's great to hear, Elaine. Thank you. Giving you a good basis to take back. Yeah, that kind of tour does make a difference. It kind of brings it to life. Any final thoughts? And otherwise, we'll log off. I think we're good. Thank you so much for coming, everyone, and appreciate your sharing in the chat and your really good thinking. You've been a great group to work with. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Priya.